Welcome to Tales from the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Mick West. Today's guest is Joe. Joe is a guy I met many years ago back on Contrail Science, back when I was debunking the chemtrail conspiracy theory. And he was a believer in the chemtrail conspiracy theory. And now he's not. And in large part, I think that is because he stayed around to try to argue with me, and eventually he saw that my arguments made sense. However, he still does believe in a bunch of conspiracy theories, and they're a bit more mainstream though. I think Joe represents a good chunk of America. He describes himself jokingly as a deplorable, which is a term Hillary Clinton used when she was running for president to describe people who supported Donald Trump. And Joe believes that their media has a very strong left-wing bias, and that social justice warriors are pushing certain social issues, particularly to do with race, over other issues. And he feels that there is essentially a conspiracy to form a one-world government headed by people like George Soros. There is this great fear that the right has that the left-wing people essentially want to do away with state sovereignty and borders and just allow a big free-for-all or some kind of authoritarian one-world government. So this is essentially the uber conspiracy theory that he believes in. We talk about that more in the second half of the interview. The first half we talk about his history with chemtrails and his opinion about other conspiracy theories. But I think it's very interesting how he is a type of guy who I think many people, if you look at his Twitter feed, you would think this guy is a racist guy because he's just going on about how black people commit all these crimes. And that certainly is kind of how it appeared to me when I looked at his Twitter feed. But he's an interesting person to talk to because I think it's really important to understand people rather than just simply dismissing people. I certainly don't agree with Joe's positions. I'm kind of a liberal person myself. But if we don't understand people and we don't talk to them, then we're not going to make any progress. So let's have a look at what Joe has to say. All right, Joe, welcome to Tales from the Rabbit Hole. I've known you for quite a long time online. I've never actually spoken to you before.
No, it's the first time.
Yeah. We've had quite an interesting past, I guess, because you've started out, you just told me you were on Contrail Science, which is like the website I did was like debunking chemtrails, and you're one of the early posters back in the day. Can you remember like back then, like, you know, what got you interested in it and what got you started posting on Contrail Science?
You can thank Jay Reynolds for that.
All right.
I guess they had done a local reporter done a story. Uh-huh. Because all of a sudden I noticed these things in the sky that I'd apparently never noticed before in my life. The story went in the paper, and I guess Jay Reynolds had picked up on the story, so he started commenting. Now, I don't know how I found my way over to Contrail Science, but it has something to do with him.
Yeah, he was posting back then on Contrail Science as well.
I noticed he would go around whenever there was a story about somebody with chemtrails, and he would show up. So
okay,
that's pretty much what it was. And I was like, wow, this is odd. Who is this guy? You know? When you're in the conspiracy world, basically, anybody who comes in, you know, you're automatically, oh, this guy must be a government worker or shill or whatever. So
is that what you thought? You actually thought that he was some kind of...
I thought Contrail Science was, yeah, of course, naturally. And of course, everybody would say, yeah, Mick West, he's a shill. He's working for the government. You know, all the common things you used to hear back then. And so how do you feel when people call you a shill?
Well, you're just used to it now. It doesn't mean anything. I know that some people are going to do it, so it doesn't really mean anything because I'm not a shill. But
no, and that's the thing I always said. I had respect for it because like I said, I've never caught you lying to me.
Yeah, no, and that's it's very important if you're going to be a debunker or someone who investigates these things. Like having absolute honesty and openness is something that's it's an important thing. Because you get the trust of people by being always honest with them.
Yeah, and the minute you get caught in a lie, then all of a sudden there goes all your credibility. So.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's works good. Honesty, best policy. Like the chemtrail thing, like you started to get interested in it, like locally. You've seen like trails in the sky.
It was actually, I mean, I guess we don't look up as much as we think we do. And it was one day in the winter, and I guess where we are in Florida, there's a lot of flights over where I live. And of course, it was the X's, it wasn't just the straight lines. And one day I just seen all these and I was like, geez, I've never seen that before. Like you said, you just believe that if you've never seen it before, then this must be something new.
Exactly.
But the first thing you do is you go on the internet and you start looking it up, and naturally that's kind of when you kind of fall into that rabbit hole. But then I just started seeing somebody where people were saying stuff like, "Oh, we're being poisoned," and all this other, and I kind of didn't buy into that part, because when we were up in D.C., I remember seeing them all over the place up in D.C. then too, and I was like, well, if this is poison and it's coming down on the White House, that just doesn't make any sense. So that's when I kind of switched gears into the geoengineering, which I noticed. I went on my site last night just to check back to see where I started with the chemtrails and then how I switched over to the geoengineering. It was only in the first couple of posts that I even mentioned the word chemtrails, and that's because I just seen it and it was just...
Yeah. So you kind of kept on with the whole geoengineering thing for a while on Metabunk. You were arguing for a while, I think.
Yeah, I even joined geoengineering Google groups, as you did. Here you're believing in geoengineering, and then you actually see scientists talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
There was a video, I think, what was it? The Loose Change guy did one with Ken Caldera, and he spoke to him. That kind of changed me quite a bit watching that, because here's a guy who was willing, he was open to explaining what's going on, and because you had a room full of chemtrails, basically, that kind of changes it a little bit. Of course, once I learned how to track the flights, thanks to you, because you see these planes, you're like, oh, it must be it's another, who knows, it's a government plane going over your head. And when I learned to track the flights through FlightAware, it kind of just made it easier, basically, to say, I know airliners aren't going over spraying anything out of the plane. So when you think they might be government planes doing it, like Evergreen or all these other, so when you can't identify the plane, but once you get to the point where you identify the flight, where it's going, where it's coming from, and of course, flying a few times, and then just watching airliners go, when you're up there and you're watching airliners go by you and they're just putting out, it's just like, and then I think you explained to me about, I guess it was a change in the jet engines, the high bypass.
The high bypass, yeah.
That they actually just put out more, they just put out more clouds, basically. After a while, you just get kind of bored with, in other words, I would go out of my way just to try to prove you wrong, and I couldn't do it. So what's the point? If you believe in something, there's got to be facts,
right,
which is kind of what you taught me in a sense, really. And without any facts, it just falls apart. There was just nothing to go by anymore. But of course, I like arguing anyway, because that's just how I am. So.
Right, I've noticed that. Yeah, I was looking at some of your stats on Metabunk. So like, after Contrail Science, I started Metabunk in like 20 something or other, and you are the 10th highest poster in terms of number of posts on Metabunk.
Yeah,
you got like 3,500 messages on Metabunk. You're number one in the number of warnings.
Yeah,
that's been given out over the years.
Because I'm the only one that lasted, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. 32 of your warnings were in the year 2014, so I think you had you were on a bit of a tear in 2014 in terms of like arguing about stuff.
It was usually Mike who would set me off all the time. Anyway, I think I remember finding a sign about a warning sign about sheep or something in New Zealand, and that kind of got me banned for a little while. And of course, I'm very political as far as you know, anyway.
Yeah,
so,
no, definitely.
That tends to get you in trouble, and that had a lot to do with getting into the chemtrail conspiracy too, because, of course, naturally, when Obama got elected,
I guess you would have described yourself as kind of a Tea Party conservative back then.
Yeah.
I don't know if you still do now. I mean, Tea Party isn't really a thing so much, is it anymore?
No, it's not. I mean, it's there. There are a lot of people that I wouldn't consider it a Tea Party. I'd just say that they're just, conservative.
Conservatives.
I guess I'm just deplorable now. That's all.
Yeah, you did. Now, some of the other conspiracy theories that you were into back then, like you talked about Obama's birth certificate. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know how seriously you took that, though. Like, did you actually think that Obama might have been born in Kenya?
I remember Sheriff Joe Arpaio when he was doing an investigation on it. Really, nothing came up. I mean, he had posted it, and everybody did the layers and all that other stuff, and they had the forensic guy and everything else, and it just never went nowhere. The conspiracy was yes, he was born in Hawaii, but his father wasn't. What was it? His father supposedly wasn't Obama. It was Frank Marshall Davis. And then, of course, they do the thing where they say, look how much he looks actually more like Frank Marshall Davis than he does his father, Barack Obama Sr. But
are you interested in stuff like that now?
Even if it was, what were you going to do? You couldn't impeach him, and it's just they had an investigation. They raised some points. They said basically that certificate that he posted online was. And you would know more than I do, that it was just all these different layers, and it just they found the original that they actually used to make his birth certificate and everything else. But
yeah, so they say. At
this point, it doesn't matter anymore, really.
Well, yeah, it's a done deal.
So why would I care now? It doesn't matter where he was born.
I would think it would still matter though. Like if it did come out now that he was born in Kenya and lied about it, that would be a pretty significant thing. So if it was actually a true thing, you'd think people would still be pursuing it.
Yeah, but they won't, because when the photographs came out of him with Louis Farrakhan that they held back purposely, it didn't matter to anybody. Which kind of strikes me kind of weird, because if you had pictures of Trump with David Duke or something, they'd be making a big deal out of it, and it's kind of odd watching politics now, because now and I want my politicians criticized. I do. I want anything. The problem was they didn't do that with Obama. He had that kid glove. You couldn't touch him, And of course, most of the media was on his side. But that,
No, I think, so you say most of the media, something that comes up when you're talking about politics and such like is Fox News. Like people get polarized by watching things like Fox News. And I think you told me that you actually listen to NPR. Did you tell me that?
Every morning I listen to NPR.
And that's very interesting, because you have very, right-wing politics, relatively speaking. And NPR is somewhat left-leaning, I would say. So
yeah. Well, it wakes me up, and I get aggravated as soon as I get up. So it makes it easy for the day. I would say it makes me pull my hair up, but I still got a lot of that left. So I guess that ain't working, but it's pretty bad. It was the same reason why I came onto your site, because you got to get both sides.
Yeah.
If everybody sticks on their side and they just hear what they want to hear, you're not going to get the full story. You got to go out and search for the truth. If you don't go out and search for the truth, you're just kidding yourself.
So you've been listening to NPR for years and years?
Actually, probably, I would say about 2 years now.
Right.
It's all Trump this, Trump that. Definitely all about race all the time for some reason, or sexual orientation. And I like listening to the classical music, but sometimes it calms me down. So,
do you think it's changed your mind about anything at all, listening to NPR? Or?
No, it just proves there's more bias than I thought. There's more media bias. It's just a fact.
Yeah, no, I just find it really fascinating that you actually choose to listen to NPR, because most people that I know listen to things or watch things that are much more attuned to their own personal political beliefs.
Yeah, but then you're not the other side of the coin.
Yeah, but why do you need to get the other side of the coin? What do you get out of it?
Because you got to balance the two out, and somewhere in the middle is the truth.
Right.
I don't know. It's why did I come on Metabunk?
Yeah. Well, you came on Metabunk because I guess you somewhat believed in chemtrails at the time.
And I was curious. I mean, pretty much, basically, I knew I could throw something at Mick, and he could do all the work for me. I think it was one time with the Sandy Hook when they were doing the Sandy Hook conspiracy, which I never believed in. But there was that one photograph of, I think, the little girl Madeline.
Yeah.
She happened to be wearing her sister's dress.
Yeah, yeah.
And, and everybody was like, "How could she be there? She's dead." But it wasn't. They just looked that much alike, and they had the same dress on, and it was you that pointed that out. And
yeah, I think it's the family.
One of your skills where I'd say, "Oh, I can throw this at Mick, and he can answer," because I like conspiracy. I'd go to like YouTube videos and stuff like that, and then I'd say, "Oh, wow, look at that! I'm going to throw this at Mick and see what he thinks of it." And then you'd go and you'd debunk it for me, so it just make it, because most of us conspiracy theorists, especially those ones that work all the time, we're kind of lazy in that way. And that's what I notice about a lot, I mean, except for maybe like Jim Lee, he still seems to be sticking at it still. That's just like way above my head what he talks about anyway, so.
Yeah, so Jim Lee, he's the guy who has a website that is basically promoting the idea that there's secret geoengineering going on. Yeah. And he has lots of stuff about the history of geoengineering. And he's an interesting chap. He went to the EPA and spoke in their hearings.
He does. He's definitely got a lot of time on his hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people, they think that they can make a living out of this type of thing, like putting interesting videos up on the internet. So he's trying to do it as a career, I guess, but it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, I think I subscribe to his channel. I don't really think he gets enough views where he could.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
Where he could actually make money off of it. I mean, you'd have to get a lot of.
I mean, I don't make any money from what I do. If I monetize my videos on YouTube, I make like $30 a month or something, because I just don't really get that many views. There's a lot of people who get way more views than I, and all they do is they just shout at the flat Earth people. I think people just find that stuff entertaining, and really you got to entertain people to make money. Just informing people isn't really enough.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that go out and they jump in the middle of the Antifa protests and stuff, and they seem to get a lot of views too. So anything where there's fighting or something like that seems to get a lot of views. But sometimes I'll watch like Secure Team. He does all those UFO videos. I'm sure you see it because he's got a lot of subscribers. Yeah. It's enjoying to watch, because he's always tags you into this, like you're going to see this. And every UFO picture I've ever seen, there's never nothing there. You would figure today with today's cameras and all that we'd be getting better photographs than we got back in the 50s, but it seems like it actually gone backwards.
So what conspiracy theories do you believe in?
I was telling my I don't believe in Santa Claus anymore. Matter of fact, around Christmas, what I do is I go down to the mall now, and when kids are there, I debunk Santa Claus right in front of them now. And then that's what I told my grandson who was here anyway.
So like go back to all the way back to say JFK. That's a fairly common thing that people think there's something suspicious going on there. Would you think that the official story is correct, or?
No, I still think there's more to that story than there was, but I don't think we'll ever know. Just maybe there's more to Lincoln's assassination than we'll ever know. Until somebody comes out with some factual evidence, it ain't worth my time. I spent a lot of time doing the geoengineering or the chemtrails more than I did, but I actually enjoyed it because I learned a lot. There's nothing wrong. I've always been into aircraft, so what kid isn't that when he was a kid? Because like I said, when I was younger, I lived near LAX, and I used to ride my bike to LAX and just watch the planes take off all the time. I lived in Hawthorne, right down the road from where SpaceX is. I was always kind of into aircraft as it was, so to think that something I love so much could be doing bad, that was just,
So what about, say, 9/11?
9/11? Nah, being that my brother-in-law, which I spoke to you about before, I think I did a post on it. He actually just died of 9/11 sickness.
Yeah.
No. And I talk to people that, they say, the Building 7 is like the only thing, but I think you posted some photographs of it. Because for a while I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. You've heard all the videos about pulling it and everything, but no, I've never really been into 9. I think what happened pretty much on 9/11.
Do you think that perhaps, sure, like the planes hit the buildings and that's what caused the collapse, but do you think there could be something behind the hijackers, like, were they funded by the CIA or something like that? Or...
They could have been funded by somebody, but I doubt by our government. I don't want to believe. I don't want to believe that our government would do something like that, and I think that's where these conspiracy theories, most of them come from, is just our distrust in government, basically. I mean, when you think about everything, whether it's the chemtrails or whether it's Kennedy assassination, it all has to do with that one thing, the government. That we just don't trust our government, and that kind of sucks that we feel that way,
Do you trust the government more now that Trump's in power than you did when Obama's in power?
Well, being that supposedly, technically, there's like a deep state behind them. No. So I guess I'd say, yeah, I believe in a deep state, basically, that there's all these unelected people that are kind of, and, whether it's Obama, whether it was Bush, whether it was Clinton, it just seems like there's nothing done in government, basically. I mean, look, we got wide open borders. They talk about, all the anti-vaxxers, how people aren't getting vaccinated and everything. And yet we got a wide open border. So you'd be like, well, if you're so worried about people getting measles, which I think we wiped it out in the year 2000, I think they said. And now all of a sudden you got all these cases of measles. And, you figured, well, maybe if we at least screen these people a little better, we wouldn't have these problems. But I don't know. I just think our government is just, I have no faith in them.
Were you a member of any groups that were into conspiracies like back then? Or was it just stuff you did by yourself? Or mostly stuff that I did by myself. I think I was, there was another site that I would post on once in a while out of New Zealand called the Contrail, but they posted just about everything over there. I would say that was pretty much the only, no, there was no groups. I'm not a group person anyway. Right. So what about people in real life, like there in Florida? Are there other people that who are into conspiracies?
Yeah, there's quite a few. There was a guy in the other day, an older guy, probably like 75 years old. And yeah, I've met quite a few. I met a couple of people from Canada and a lot of older guys in their 70s that still, one Canadian, supposedly he knew all this stuff he said he was with the Canadian government, all this stuff about chemtrails and all this other stuff, but he never produced anything. I told him, well, come back. But I think he was just a little eccentric in a way.
Yeah, you do get that sometimes. Well, I always say there's eccentric people who believe in conspiracies and eccentric people who don't. So just because someone's eccentric, it doesn't mean that their conspiracy theory is wrong. But, obviously you're going to get a whole range of peoples, and the more extreme the conspiracy theory is, then the more likely you're going to get people who are a little bit eccentric, to use the term.
I had a gentleman in the other day, and it's because I own a business, so I see a lot of people. And he started, and we were talking politics and all that, and he didn't seem like he trusted Trump much, but I don't think he trusts anybody. And he was talking about 9/11, because I got like a lot of 9/11 memorabilia and stuff like that around my shop. So,
right.
And he started, he was kind of far out there, blaming Israel and, for 9/11. And I don't, unless you got evidence, there's just nothing there as far as I'm concerned. It's just, that's why I spent so long just looking and pretty much I came up dry. I couldn't find no evidence for it. And it used to really piss me off sometimes, because you really made me work harder than I had.
So you would try actually
put out a video and then redone it, I mean, it's just like you. If there was some evidence tomorrow on a conspiracy that came out, you would probably agree if it was 100% factual evidence.
If there was evidence, yeah. I mean, obviously there's real conspiracies that go on all the time in government and in industry and all over the place. So, yeah, no one's saying there's no conspiracies.
Well, it was like they say, steel doesn't melt at whatever from jet fuel, basically.
Yeah, well, it doesn't. So, but it does get softer. So it does.
And I always wondered, up at that height of the building, with a hole through the building, and that wind must be, because I've been on top of the World Trade Center. It's pretty windy up there.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that add to that wind blowing, because it wasn't penetrated completely? If I believe they had jet engines were found, on the other side.
Yeah, definitely.
Wouldn't that wind blowing through there just increase the heat?
Absolutely, yeah, and you can kind of see that in some of the pictures. You can kind of see the flames kind of being blown out of the windows. So yeah, having a good air supply is obviously very important for a fire, from the fire's point of view. And you see that on Building 7 as well, because all the windows on the south side of the building were all smashed out.
Yeah.
So they don't show you that very often, the conspiracy theorists.
That's kind of what changed my mind when I seen those newer pictures of Building 7, and I was like, because it looked a lot worse than where we see it fall down on its own. We see it from the side where it doesn't look like there's any damage.
Yeah, there's zero damage because the damage on that side, from that point of view, is actually hidden behind the buildings that are in front of it. And all the real damage was on the other side, which is where World Trade Center 1 actually essentially fell almost on top of it.
I think I've showed you. I got that piece of paper from the World Trade Center that my brother-in-law picked up.
Yeah.
And in it has a lot. It had a lot of the powder in the bottom still. A lot of that looks like pumice. And I remember taking a torch to that, and nothing burned in there. So I was just like,
yeah, interesting. So do you still have that?
Yeah, I still have it.
Piece of paper. So you've actually got some of the famous World Trade Center dust.
Yeah, because it's in a Ziploc bag.
Oh, interesting. That's that's a big point of conflict with people. Like there's dust analysis. Like they say they look at it and they find these red grey flakes, which they say are thermite.
Well, there was a lot of asbestos in the building. They were removing the asbestos in the building. That was still going on. They said that was going to take like so many years to do it. So that's why all these guys got the 9/11 sickness and all the other stuff. That's what killed my brother-in-law. Because he was there on the cleanup and everything else. And he wasn't just there on the cleanup. He was there after they collapsed. So
So I guess you're supporting Jon Stewart now.
I'll tell you, I give him credit. Yeah, he did pretty good, and most conservatives did too. Yeah. Rush Limbaugh would say the same thing. I don't really agree with this guy anytime, but he was 100% correct on it. So see, so sometimes they do good. That my same brother-in-law, he was also, and you could read, he was also the resource officer down at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. He was good friends with the coach, which was the only guy, because there's a write-up on him.
Oh, that was the one where the shooting was.
Yeah. There's an article in the Daily Beast about Coach, and he talks about my brother-in-law Richard Wentz, basically, on how they were like best friends, and he wound up being the only hero in the end. And of course, because he did a 9/11 video from the high school.
Okay, yeah.
Right, and he spoke about the building falling and all that, and what he did and everything. So it was pretty interesting.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird how
I think like having someone who was actually there is a good kind of antidote in a way to the conspiracy theories.
Yeah,
a lot of people some people doubt that it even happened at all, and obviously there was tens of thousands of witnesses and hundreds of thousands of witnesses in New York, which is pretty ridiculous. But it's if someone that you personally knew was involved in it, like my father-in-law was running in the Boston Marathon when the bombs went off, and he was just 5 minutes away from the finish line at that time, so he could quite easily have been caught up in it. So I think just knowing the reality of it really kind of immunizes you against some of the conspiracy.
Was there any conspiracy with the Boston bombing? I don't remember any.
Oh yeah, like people thought that it was staged, and that it was fake blood. And they used people who were amputees, and they had prosthetic legs and stuff.
Okay, like the Sandy Hook and all that.
So it's all pretty ridiculous, but obviously, some people believe it.
Well, yeah, that's pretty sad for the victims or the victims' families, anyways.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Clive Bundy and the Bundy gang and Lavoy Finicum in Oregon. This is something that I think you
guys followed,
you followed that, and because you mentioned it on Metabunk, because we talked a bit about the Lavoy Finicum. Let's just remind people real quick. There was standoff where a bunch of kind of protesters, I guess, headed by the Bundy people,
Armed protesters, I would say, yeah,
occupied a federal building, which was just a park ranger's office, I think, a wildlife refuge,
wildlife center or something.
Yeah. And there was a big standoff, and it kind of culminated in this one guy getting shot after he'd driven away, and they'd followed him, and he got out in the snow, and it wasn't clear whether he was like raising his hands or reaching for a gun. And he got shot by the police, and that was a big deal. And it harkens back to things like the Ruby Ridge incident and the what's the other one? The Waco, yeah. So and it's become part of this kind of, not exactly mythology, but these things that are used to stir up feelings against the government.
Bundy Ranch incident happened, and that's the reason for that is they used Waco and Ruby Ridge as, we can't have this happen. So if all these armed guys go there, they just can't come down on them and do that, because
it's bad press.
Yeah, as much as David Koresh, he was a little out there, but that was a big mistake in our country. That shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, and they've changed the policy a lot since then, so it's very much now like wait them out.
Which is what they did. Well, they pretty much did that in Nevada.
Was Nevada the original Bundy thing? That was
the original Bundy thing.
Yeah, Cliven was the patriarch of the family there, and they had some kind of dispute with the government over grazing rights. And the government had moved in, the BLM had moved in to basically move his cattle or confiscate something, and there was kind of an armed standoff at the time.
Yeah, because I guess he felt he was there. His family was there for hundreds of years, or 100 and something years, or whatever it was, and they never had to deal with the grazing rights.
Yeah.
You actually had the Center for Biological Diversity. They seem to be the instigators in a lot of these, because they're like an environmental group, and they seem to be the instigators in all, and the one up in Oregon and the one down there too. I guess they feel that a desert tortoise is more important than a cow, but I think Bundy was like the last rancher in that area. They pretty much pushed everybody else out.
Yeah. So like with the this type of thing, with people protesting against the government, do you think that do you think it's like a serious thing in that there's a real risk that the government is going to do something that these people need to be aware of? Like, do you think that there's going to be a major event, or do you think it's just kind of this creeping encroachment upon people's rights?
I think we want to stop. I think we want to stop a major event from happening, and these little incidents, knowing that people are gonna, like, I wouldn't say go to the rescue or something, but just show up to back people up might stop it. We just don't want another Waco.
Yeah. I saw on your Twitter feed, I think, and I saw you had a Lavoy Finicum 3% sticker you posted. I think it was a response that you did to somebody else who was saying, like, we have to do something about the NRA, and you responded like it's not going to happen, and you posted this Lavoy Finicum 3% thing. Can you explain what the 3% thing means?
The 3% is a militia, is what that is. That was the militia that was at the up on the Oregon standoff, basically, and it's just something I just throw out once in a while. I don't belong to any militias. Like I says, I don't join groups.
Yeah.
I'm kind of an individual, but do I support the militia? Yes, I do. Do
you have bumper stickers?
Just on my pickup truck.
All right.
I have an old pickup truck that I used to, when I got to go to Home Depot and stuff like that. It's got stickers all over it, and
Do you still have some old chemtrail stickers on there?
No, I don't have any. Never had any of those anyway. So
yeah. Well, I ask about bumper stickers because there's a friend of mine here in California, and he's very concerned about militias, I guess, and about people kind of a trend in society to be very polarized. And he says that he sees things like these 3% stickers and similar types of things, like pro-militia stuff, like Second Amendment things. And he feels like there's this kind of, I don't know, this kind of increasingly widening gulf between what he sees as the more easygoing America and a more hardcore, violent side of things.
Well, if you remember, in Oregon, there was a lot of 3% militia there. Even after Lavoie got killed and the Bundys got arrested, they still had the people there. And what happened with them? I mean, they arrested a few of them, and there was no shooting even after Lavoie got killed.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've gotten to that point where it's that bad where I'd worry about it. Basically, it could, but you'd have to have something pretty bad. A lot of people would have to get shot or killed before I think that any militia would do anything. And I think most of the guys that join a militia, like I said, I've never been in a militia. Don't think I would. But
do you have militias there in Florida? I wish you must do.
Oh, I bet there's a lot of them. Yeah, there's quite a few. But it's just like we fear the left probably more than people on the left fear the militia. Because,
interesting. So what do you fear from about the left? What do you think the left is going to do? That
just that with our PC culture, basically, and how this country is being changed, how you can't say things these days, or guys can't refuse to bake cakes for certain people of sexual preference for some reason without getting sued, especially when they're just being targeted by these people too. It's off of the laws. I think there was a case yesterday in Ohio where it was a store that's been around for I think they said 4 generations. And he had a group of young African-American kids that went in there, and I guess they went to buy liquor. Well, the owner refused them because they had fake ID. Mm-hmm. One of them had walked out with the liquor bottle. Now, they belonged to this university, I guess, these kids. So they said, they got arrested and everything, but then it wound up, the university started backing these kids, and they kept having these protests out in front of this person's store in Ohio that's been there for all these generations. Well, yesterday, the store won a lawsuit against this college because it was the college administrators and then basically everybody in the college. They kept, destroying the reputation of this bakery, or I think it couldn't have been a bakery. I forgot what it was, but it was because they don't sell liquor at a bakery.
Like a convenience store maybe or something like that.
But I forgot what kind of store it was, but they just destroyed their business basically because of lies. Because everything, it's like you got a shooting in, what was it? There was a shooting in Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee. You heard about that one?
No. Well, I might have done, but...
okay. And now there's riots over that. Yeah. Supposedly he tried to run the U.S. Marshals over with his car.
Okay.
And pulled a gun on him, so naturally he died. But they leave out, what they're not saying is he stole some guy's car. Matter of fact, that was supposedly the car he was in when the cops shot him, basically. And he shot the guy 5 times and he stole his car. So, and then the media, if you listen to the media, they just twist and everything. So to me, the media is our biggest, the way they report stories, it's just messed up, really, in this country.
I gotta say, I was looking at your your Twitter feed again, and there were a bunch of stories like the ones you just told me there. And I know a lot of people would say that, just looking through your Twitter feed, that it seems like it's racist, and that you seem to be putting a lot of, here's some black people doing these crimes, and there's lots of that. How would you respond to someone saying that you're a racist?
I wouldn't respond, because that's the losing part of the argument when they, basically these are basically with all this criminal justice reform, and it's odd how they make it seem like this certain group of people is being picked on by the police, and we're holding them back. When, if you look at statistics say otherwise. Over 50% of all violent crime is committed by young black males between the age of like 14, I think it is, and in their 20s, which makes up 8% of the population. Now, that's probably why there's so many problems in the community. Now, I don't want it to be that way. It was like with that kid that was shot. Brandon Weber was his name on Twitter. Now, I was on that and I was arguing with people. And it's like they're all defending this kid who's a criminal. And this is why the next kid, they're going to emulate this kid and put him on a pedestal like he's a hero, and he's not a hero. And then the next kid's going to wind up the same way. And I don't want that, no matter what color anybody is. But that's the problem, is every time there's a criminal that's shot and they go out of their way to put him up on this pedestal that he was this angel and everything, and all these other kids look up to him, what's going to happen? You're just going to get more kids like that. Color really doesn't matter, because I seem to have no problem with, you know, I don't have any problem with anybody of any color, basically. I just have a problem with criminals. That's all.
And you think that the social justice people are like kind of getting it wrong?
They're getting it wrong. They're basically, I would say, in a sense, they enable them, basically, and it just makes things, they're defending them, you know. It's just like if you had a kid of your own and he kept doing wrong and you kept saying, no, it's not his fault and everything else, he's not going to get any better, you know. Well, as a society, they're not.
Do you think there's something behind this? This kind of like, you know, these, the Black Lives Matter versus Blue Lives Matter in terms of, like some kind of ultimate agenda from your perspective?
Well, what was it? I think Soros, and he's naturally our nemesis. You know, Soros funded a lot. Yeah, chaos in the street. You know.
So I mean, that kind of sounds a bit like a conspiracy theory. When you put it like that. Well, at least.
Have you read Rules for Radicals, Saul Alinsky?
I think I've read bits of it because you mentioned it before.
Yeah.
Years ago.
And I think the last presidential candidate that lost, I forgot what her name was. I think she did her college thesis on that. Well, basically, what do we do when we have riots in the street? We got an open border. Look at California now. You live in California. What's the population of California? It's doubled since I lived there.
Yeah, it's pretty big. I don't know where it is, like 50 million or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was 40 plus million, I think it was. But when I was there in the 80s, it was 20 million.
Yeah.
And I thought it was crowded then. They're so worried about the water. Oh, we don't have enough water. Well, you just doubled your population and you got wide open borders. How are you going to share that water with everybody? It just doesn't, it doesn't make any sense. Why would you want to import people? Why would you want to import people from the most dangerous parts of the world, which is Central America? You look at the crime rate in El Salvador, Guatemala. I mean, those are the most dangerous places on the planet. And yet,
have you looked at the statistics there? Because I think, like, when you look at the crime rates amongst immigrants, regardless of whether they're legal or illegal, they tend to commit less crimes than people who are not. People in the same demographic, but actual American citizens are more likely.
That's pretty much what they. But why should we import any of them?
Yeah, but it will actually reduce the crime rate on average if we import these people who are trying to stay on the good side of the law. So it's anyway, this is it's probably a more involved discussion than we need to have. So, but like, it's interesting that you're talking about George Soros, like because that is kind of, I guess it is kind of a conspiracy. It's like, what are they trying to do?
Basically.
What do you think Soros is actually trying to do here to America? And why?
It's quite obvious. What is that? Open society, and what's that all about? That's one world government.
All right, so
this society, no borders. That's what he wants. The problem is, you take a country like ours and you just open the borders, and what are we going to become? Just another third world country.
So do you think how does the Black Lives Matter tie into that?
It's just part of it. It's just chaos, basically. But they've kind of died off. Now you don't see them as much now that you don't have Barack Obama supporting them and everything. If you remember when he was in office, basically, Every time somebody got shot, they were there stopping people, stopping, closing up freeways and stuff. Anybody else did that, we'd be arrested.
So, you think? Why do you think it's died off then? The BLM stuff, Black Lives Matter.
Quite a bit, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you think that's because, I don't know, George Soros has ordered it, or just because it's harder to do?
I would say it was the change in the White House, basically.
But why would that actually have an effect on what
I don't know. Yeah,
Soros is doing?
I don't know, because you don't hear about. I haven't, other than this shooting in Tennessee the other day, you don't really hear about him as much. It doesn't seem like you don't see it on the media as much. Matter of fact, I haven't even seen that on, let's say, CNN or anything else, like you did Mike Brown. Remember Mike Brown and all that. And for some reason, it just doesn't, it never makes the media for some reason. Well, you remember when Mike Brown was shot. He was a guy in St. Louis, and that caused the biggest riots. That's when D. Ray, whatever his name, showed up on the scene, and that's where his money was coming from. He was getting funded, he was getting funded by Soros. And then it was less than a week later, there was a kid named Dylan Taylor who was shot, I believe, in Utah. And I mean, he clearly did do nothing, but he was reaching for. He had headphones on, and he was reaching to turn down the volume on whatever he had, and he got shot and died right there on the spot. And that never made the media at all, other than in Utah. And if the cop got away with that.
Was he a black kid?
No, he wasn't, and that's why. And it's like not even a week after Mike Brown. If you look up Dylan Taylor, there's a video on YouTube, basically. You can see him, he was shot, and supposedly he was a troubled kid. I think he was white Hispanic, pretty much. He looked like a white kid, but, I think they said he was a mix of Hispanic and white is anymore. I don't even really know. And there was no attention given. So it's the media manipulation. At the time, I think the media focused more on all those stories. And of course, when the media gets there, like they did with Mike Brown, they were there all the time. Remember CNN and everything. It just made matters worse, basically. And we had chaos. And it seemed like when Trump got elected, there wasn't much of that. When's the last time you've heard of BLM protest?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it's just because there haven't been major incidents like that.
But they made that. Mike Brown wasn't a major incident. They just made it a major incident. It was no more of a major incident than the one that happened in Tennessee. I believe, like they say, I think the media just manipulates everything.
And you think
that's a conspiracy that I believe in right now.
Right. So you would think like the left wing media, like CNN, I guess, and MSNBC and MSN and CBS. You think that they are part of the agenda, like the Soros agenda?
Yeah, I would say so.
So in a way, they're part of the conspiracy. I don't want to be like putting a conspiracy theory out there, but
part of the deep state. That's
yeah. So you think that CNN is part of a plot to create a one world government?
Maybe just elect Democrats. That's all I really think.
Yeah, but I mean, you kind of like earlier.
Independent media, they are a one party media, like some people think Fox is. But Fox is, other than what, Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, and maybe Sean Hannity, you got, but on Fox is nothing but a bunch of never Trumpers or a bunch of left wings on Fox, because even Fox has changed. So there really is, you got to watch like independent media. You almost have to go to Alec Jones to get the truth, and isn't that true?
Yeah.
if you can find them anymore. So,
what do you think of Russia's involvement in the affairs of America in terms of Russia trying to stir things up? That's
a conspiracy theory. That's the biggest conspiracy theory.
You don't think that's happened at all?
I think they always manipulate. I think they always have, just like we do in everybody else's elections, just like we did in Ukraine's, just like we did in Israel. Not the last election with Netanyahu, but the one previous to that. And that was Soros' money, too. That was dumped into that. I think they had a bunch of NGOs over there trying to defeat him because they wanted Netanyahu out. So why is it our country's allowed to interfere in these elections, just like we interfere in every country?
Well,
why are we allowed to do that? And then you get Russia, they put a couple Facebook ads on, and
Do you think that Russia should be allowed to interfere in the elections?
Do I think they? No, I don't think they should be allowed to interfere. But if they can put some, if there's anything that they put up that's factual, it's just like Trump said the other day. If somebody comes up with some dirt on one of the votings, I would take it.
So what if Russia started spending like hundreds of millions of dollars on commercials on TV, like supporting one candidate?
Supporting one candidate? No, I don't think I'd go for that because I trust Russia a little bit less than I do my own government.
I mean, that's definitely illegal.
But I'm saying like as far as our RT, sometimes I'll see a video from RT and they do some pretty good work. I mean, they're going to say something like, "Is that propaganda?" They actually seem to favor the Democrats more on RT than they do Trump anyway.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess you must watch more RT than me. I wouldn't say they, support Trump as such, but they definitely they support Russia, and so whatever they're doing is trying to further the interests of Russia.
But what's the difference between RT in Russia and, let's say, CNN in the United States, in a sense?
RT is funded by the Russian government. It actually is state media, whereas CNN is an independent company. I guess the closest you have here to state-sponsored would be, I don't know, maybe NPR because they get some grants, but they're not really. It doesn't mean that NPR is singing the praises of Trump because they get money from the government. But RT definitely
they get money from Facebook, and they get money from a lot of companies. NPR, I think they get it's Facebook. I know they get money from Facebook because every time they mention it, they have to put that little disclaimer in there.
It's sponsored by. Yeah, well, Facebook have got a lot of money, so I guess they're just going to try and throw it somewhere.
Yeah, and I don't trust Facebook anymore either, really.
Yeah, what do you think about things like the censorship of various people? Like people are being deplatformed, like Alex Jones, obviously, but there's other people who are less extreme than him.
Yeah, no, I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of people just disappear from Twitter altogether. I follow this one person who's on Twitter now, and she had 250,000 followers. All of a sudden, she lost it like that, and I couldn't figure it out because she never posts anything like that. I thought maybe because her numbers got so big, but they never got a reason. That naturally, she started another Twitter account anyway and started all over. But it was just, how do you get that many followers and then for no reason at all you just deplatform completely?
Was she kind of like a far right type of person?
I would say she's on the right, but I wouldn't say she's far right. I wouldn't even say she's as far on the right as I am, basically.
Yeah.
Twitter's a weird platform.
You think like the Silicon Valley, like the social media companies are part of this kind of trend that you talked about, like the Soros world government type thing?
I think it's just that they're all just left wing, and that's where and I believe coming up to the 2020 elections, they're going to purge a lot more people.
Right. So from Facebook and Twitter and
from the right, and I mean, it's just like on YouTube now. If you even see a video on chemtrails, it says chemtrails or anything else, there's a little Wikipedia disclaimer underneath it now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just.
Well, it's actually quite a good article, the one they linked to. I think it's actually the Encyclopedia Britannica article.
That's it.
Well, we've been talking about an hour now, so thank you very much. It's been a very interesting conversation.